son, Christopher Buckley, grandly answers that question in his new book about his mom and father losing Mom and Pop. Now, don't get put off by that waspy title there. Losing Mom and Pop is one hell of a book. I'm just kidding, Chris. It is a great book.
Thank you for clarifying
I heard about it from the woman who runs Politics and Prose bookstore months ago. She said, you won't believe it. Chris Buckley's written a book about his dad and his mom. You got to read it. She put it on hold the minute it came out. I went racing over to read it. I reviewed it for the Daily Beast. I loved it.
Very
I love that book, and I want to sell it for you in a sense because I think if you care about that question, so I'm going to be tough here.
All right. This is called
the Bill Buckley we saw all those years. Well, let's take a look at, I think we have it. Let's take a look at the last time your dad was on this show. It's a clip from Wliiam F. Buckley's last appearance on Harbaugh. This was 5 years ago. He was getting old, obviously, talking about the first time that he, Bill Buckley, the founder of modern conservatism, met the first hero of modern conservatism, Ronald Reagan. Let's talk about a great story. Your fellow movement organizer, Ronald Reagan. Tell me about the first time you met him.
I first met him in 1959 when I found out he was scheduled to introduce me before I gave a speech to a convention of doctors. What happened then is as we moved into the theater, the sound system was not working. So he told a few jokes and tried to pacify the audience, but after a while he said, we got to do something about this, and they couldn't find the janitor or the other guy with the key. So he said, well, where do you turn on the system? Somebody pointed up to the second floor where the sound system was. He opened the window by the stage and catwalked over to the window corresponding to the sound system and broke it open with his elbow, moved in, turned on the system, came in, and proceeded with the evening.
So that's Ronald Reagan, the kind of guy that knows how to break and enter when he has to.
You know, it occurred to me the last time I was, the time before last I was on this show, I had neglected to wear a tie.
Right.
And he called me afterwards to rebuke me for not having worn a tie.
Seriously?
Yeah.
So that's the real Buckley?
That's, well, you know, that's Puff.
Okay, let me ask you this. I always like to do this to people.
And here I am without a tie.
We saw Bill Buckley here. We saw him writing books. He wrote 50-plus books, a zillion columns. In fact, I think of him writing columns in the back of a cab or somewhere, just getting it done.
He used to pound them out on a
fastest typist in the world.
Laptop.
Yeah. What was different? Now, this is the hard question from what we saw.
Well, he was in some ways for a public guy. He was a very private guy. He was a very loving father. He was, you know, he could be direct. You know, my next to last book, for instance, a novel that was getting, you know, quite well reviewed, really. I think, actually, I was on your show, and I think you liked it. And I sent it to him, and his comment came back in a PS of an email about other things. It was, sorry, this one didn't work for me. You know? So he could be, you know, at my college graduation.
Do you know how many people have fathers like that? A zillion.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not.
These guys from World War II were tight with their trophies.
Sure, yeah.
They didn't give. It's not like Little League now where everybody gets a trophy.
No, I'm not complaining, Chris. But you asked me what he was like. You know, he was he was great. He was a great man in the literal sense. But great men are, you know, they're the stars of their own movies. I found in the course of writing the book, I came across a wonderful quote by Carlyle. And it goes like this: let me have my own way exactly in everything, and a more sunny and pleasant creature does not exist. You know,
wow. If everything's okay.
I'm tempted to make that my motto.
I was at the service at St. Patrick's, and you got up there and said, he told me, if I'm still famous, let's get St. Patrick's. That had a lot to it, that statement.
Set the scene. It's his memorial mass at St. Patrick's. 2,200 people. It was packed. 20 priests celebrating the mass, and I got up and I was following Henry Kissinger's eulogy. Tough act to follow, and I said, well, he and I had talked about this day many times, and he said, if I'm still famous, do it at St. Pat's. Otherwise, just stick me away in Stamford. And I said, well, Pup, I guess you're still famous.
So he really did say that to you.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. He was a, you know, he had a very healthy ego, but he was also a very humble man. He was a devout Catholic, and there he is at Ronald Reagan's funeral.
What was it like to be out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? I mean, my dad and I never did anything quite so lonely as this. He said, let's take a sailboat and let's go to Gibraltar, and you set off from Florida or somewhere, and you're out there in the middle of the Atlantic, not knowing what the weather changes are going to be. Did you have any fallback position around in the middle if the weather changed? Well, no,
but I mean, if you're between, say, Bermuda or the Azores and Portugal, you're pretty much out there. These days, I mean, if you're sinking, you can send out a mayday, and someone's going to come. The thing about sailing with Pup, it was always an adventure, because as I say, being a great man, I figure great men always have too much sail up. You know, it's people like timorous souls like myself. If a storm is coming, a squall is coming, you know, put down the sails, do it.
So he was ballsy.
He was, yes, he was quite ballsy. I tell a story in the book about how when he was at college and he was learning how to fly, a friend of his wanted to go to visit his girlfriend in Boston, and my dad, with 1.5 hours of cockpit time, 1.5 hours, said, "I'll fly you." So he flew him and got lost on the way back. I mean,
was that intimidating to have a great man as a father? Somebody once said, I love this quote, I've never forgotten. One of Al Jolson's, the great singers, one of his many wives said, "Genius is easier to take from 3 rows back."
Well, it could be, you know, it's just different, but it's still your dad. I mean, he's still Dad. But I got to, you know, meet a lot of interesting people. I met Ronald Reagan when I was 14. My dad took me out to California. He was taping some firing lines in 1966, and I'll confess that the high point of the trip was the firing line not with Ronald Reagan, but with Robert Vaughn, the man from U.N.C.L.E., who had some aspirations.
Yeah, we thought he'd run for the Senate on the liberal side, Democrats.
Yeah. Well, that was short-lived, but he took me to visit Herbert Hoover when I was 7. He was living in the Waldorf Towers, and Herbert Hoover gave me a silver dollar, which I promptly actually used to buy comic books.
Well, that's more than most people got out of that guy. Everybody else got Hoovervilles.
And I got that's what made me a Republican.
A real tough question, right?
Yeah.
He was one of the first guys to do what I do for a living, your dad. He was the first sort of literary or television politician, if you will. He had a point of view politically. He advanced it on television through question and answer, through firing line, through those wonderful columns he wrote all those years in the books. He was the first to do that. Why didn't you do what he did? Why didn't you follow in his footsteps? You could have done it. You're verbal. You're political.
Well, I write, you know.
But you haven't done what you haven't, like Podoritz's kid has followed in his footsteps. Irving Kristol, Bill's followed in his father's footsteps. All these conservative kids seem to have done what their dad did.
Well, I tried to, but I got fired by National Review.
Well, there was a reason for that. It wasn't quality; it was point of view.
No, I do my thing. I think it's very complicated to try to follow. Look, no, he's too big an act to follow. I've always tried to do my own thing, and I think maybe what I do, I do better than he could have, and what he did much better than I ever did.
That's a good thing for a son to do. Try something else.
Well,
by the way, did you vote for Barack Obama?
I'm sorry?
Did you vote for Barack Obama?
I did indeed.
Did your father?
Well, he died.
He didn't make it.
He died in February.
What do you have?
Well, Chris, it's tricky trying to channel your father's ghost.
Go for it.
Hamlet tried it without great success. I think it's possible he might have. I think it's possible. Some of his very conservative friends of his generation, I'm now learning, voted for Barack Obama. So it's possible.
A lot of people, I think, like Susan Eisenhower, a lot of people grew up on that other side, saw something fine in Barack Obama.
Pup crossed a lot of line. Remember, he endorsed Joe Lieberman. back in 1988, and Al Lowenstein in 1976, when Al Lowenstein was one of the most liberal members of Congress, was running at the same time my Uncle Jimmy was.
Your dad got Lieberman to beat Weicker. I think he played a big part in that. I think he helped him. And by the way, he ran for mayor of New York and hoped he wouldn't win.
What will you do if you win, Mr. Buckley? Demand a recount.
Right. Hey, thank you, Christopher Buckley. It's a great book, by the way. I've read every word of it. It also has the Chris Matthews standard. No more than 250 pages. Books you can actually finish, not tomes. Once you put them down, you can't pick them up. This is a book you can finish, and it's a really well-written book. And if you grew up like I did, looking up to your dad as a hero, you got to read this book. Got to read this book. Anyway, thank you.